The land I inherited from my uncle was more than just dirt and grass. It was a legacy, a piece of my family's soul. But when a ruthless HOA, backed by forged signatures and deceit, tried to seize it, they unknowingly unleashed a storm. What began as a battle for survival would become a fight that would tear down empires, spark a movement, and redefine what it means to own the land. This isn't just my story, it's a warning. The fight for this ranch isn't over, it's only just begun. I stood stock still on my porch, mouth agape, heart racing as if it had been hit by a blacksmith's hammer. Before me, 500-year-old oaks, planted more than a century ago by my great-grandfather, were in shambles. Their giant trunks cut cleanly in two, covered the ground. Their stumps remained upright, like gravestones, grieving the loss of the giants that had stood guard over my family's land. In the background, a yellow bulldozer cast a shadow, its blades smeared with sawdust. The huge branches of the destroyed trees were stacked like trash to be thrown away. A crew clad in orange vests and hard hats sprawled indolently, giggling and taking sips from water bottles, oblivious to the destruction they'd wrought. "What the hell is this?" I yelled, charging towards them, my fists tightly clenched. The guy with the clipboard didn't even glance up. "Just doing our job, sir." Silver Pines HOA instructed us to remove these unauthorized trees encroaching onto their property, he said matter-of-factly. I froze in my tracks, amazed. "This is my ranch. I'm not part of your damn HOA," I exclaimed. Finally, he looked me in the eye, shrugging apathetically. "Paperwork says otherwise." A queasy feeling churned in my belly as I spun around, taking in the pasture that lay behind my home. Neon orange markers on wooden poles speckled the far corner of my land, a red stripe slicing across what I'd grown up calling my own. And then, beyond that stripe, my gaze landed on a shiny metal sign pounded into the ground. Future location of Silver Pines Community Park. My knees almost gave out. They hadn't merely killed my trees, they were stealing my land, with a piece of paper asserting I had no voice. But that wasn't even the worst part. That night, a knock at my door chilled me to the bone. Only 3 weeks before, it all seemed like a new beginning. I'd inherited this Colorado ranch from my Uncle Walter, who'd passed away at 87, leaving me the house, the barns, the land, in his worn-out journals. I'd left behind a suffocating finance job in Chicago to follow in his footsteps, chasing the dream he'd held on to since his 20s. The ranch had been everything I'd hoped for, a slice of paradise. Horses ran free in the rear paddock, wildflowers fluttered on the fences, and those oak trees, planted way back in the early 1900s, stood as proud sentinels at the southern border. We were mostly retired people, good sorts who'd come over frequently bearing casseroles and tales of Walter's resistance to. Developers hovered like sharks, biding their time. One morning, George and Martha, neighborhood residents, sat on the porch with me, having coffee. They cautioned me regarding the Silver Pines HOA, a gated neighborhood a mile from us, where the lawns were immaculate and neighbors complained about seeing cows. They'd made Walter offers of millions, but he always turned them down. "This land remains in the family," George quoted him. I laughed it off. "They're in bad luck. I'm not selling." But Martha's eyes slitted. "Check your boundaries," as she cautioned. "They've been encroaching." Hesitant, I took out Walter's ancient survey and matched it to a GPS map. All was well, until I looked on the Silver Pines HOA website. There their boundaries stretched out, engulfing 2 acres of my property. Red flags flashed in my brain. At the county office, I waited 2 hours before a young clerk named Ethan told me my worst nightmare. "Your parcel's listed under HOA maintenance," he stated, furrowing his brow at his screen. "That's not possible," I snapped. "This ranch has been independent for more than a century." Ethan probed further, his scowl deepening. Then in a low voice he whispered, "An application to consolidate your property into Silver Pines was filed. It's illegal, but if it got through, I'll investigate it and phone you within the week." My trees were gone by Friday. That evening, while the sky blazed orange as the sun went down, my door shook to a knock. I opened it to stand before a lanky man in a blazer who stood with 2 menacing security guards on either side of him. "Evening," he said, a blade-like smile on his lips. "My name is Victor Hale. I am president of the HOA for Silver Pines." I folded my arms, bristling. You're the one who killed my trees. He didn't blink. They were on our property, Mr. Harper, on the official maps. I could hardly hold my anger in check. This is my ranch. You know that. Victor produced a map from his folder, Silver Pines' logo emblazoned on it. This indicates otherwise. Contest it if you wish, but until then, we'll clear out any unauthorized vegetation. I wanted to shred the map. I'm not in your HOA. We never signed the agreement. Victor's smile broadened, cruel and cold. The transfer records beg to differ. He showed me an envelope. You're in default $2,500 a day for encroachment. Fences, livestock pens, unauthorized trees. I gazed, wordless, as he said, we'll be inspecting within 48 hours. Failure to comply results in escalation. As they disappeared into the distance, leaving me stunned, my phone vibrated. A message from Ethan. Urgent. Discovered forged signatures in Walter's name. Dated after he died. Meet me at the office. My hands shook. How far had this reached? I didn't sleep a wink that evening. Every creak, every blast of wind had me glancing at the windows. The emptiness where the oaks had stood was oppressive. At dawn, I was in the county office. In the county office, Ethan pushed a folder across his desk. These papers, allegedly signed by your uncle, were submitted 2 months after he was dead. He indicated a notarized transfer contract for a community park. A surge of nausea hit me as I read. The notary who was recorded as having signed it. She passed away 3 years ago, I breathed. Ethan nodded. It was filed immediately after probate, before your inheritance was settled. Snakes, I growled, rage churning within. They forged everything. Ethan's expression hardened. You need a land use lawyer, and pronto. They're having a hearing next week where Silver Pines is accusing you of squatting on their property. I balled my fists. They're attempting to invalidate my deed. Right, Ethan said. You need to move now. That fire of fury ignited within me. Those son-of-a-gun orange flags, sneering at me, daring me. But I swore I would battle this. I called Lucas Grant, my law school friend, who'd turned into a land dispute attorney. This is crazy, Lucas said when I explained to him the forgery of the deceased man's signature. You forged the dead man's signature? Federal fraud. That's what it is. He flew away that weekend, vowing to demolish Silver Pines. But 2 evenings later, the horror persisted. I returned to discover my fence gate open extremely wide, tire tracks to the rear barn. Heart pounding, I ran down the walk and discovered workers taking down my pasture fencing using HOA wrecking orders. One of them sneered, gesturing towards the unlawful obstacles in their park area. I began to record. You're trespassing, and those documents are counterfeit. Get off my property. They hesitated briefly and departed, leaving broken fences and a seething anger within me. I put the video on the internet that evening. HOA stealing my ranch. I'm not under their HOA. They forged my uncle's signature. Within a morning, it had blown up. 1.2 million views. Comments poured in. Sue them, name and shame them. Then a news truck pulled up. Reporter Sarah Cole, with pointed chin and quick smile, walked with me while I toured her through the stumps and broken stakes. This is criminal, she complained, recording my story. And just when things couldn't go any further south, a letter fell into my mailbox. A stampless letter with no return address. Notice of immediate property seizure. Silver Pines demanded all of my ranch because of continued violations. I was stunned, reading it as the silence was broken by the revving of engines. 3 Silver Pines logo trucks sped down my driveway, followed by a tow truck with rattling chains in tow. They had come to take it all. I didn't think. I went inside, got my granddad's rifle, and put it on my back. As I reached the porch, I cried out, "One more step, and I call the sheriff." Victor Hale stepped out of the first truck, pretending he wasn't even upset. "This is a lawful seizure, Mr. Harper," he drawled, his voice as silky smooth as a snake's, "on a dead man's signature." Victor Hale's sneer stumbled when Sarah's camera rolled. "Get out, or I call the cops," I snarled. The air grew electric. They took a step back, then retreated. the threat of my resistance, and Sarah's camera, too great. The tape aired that evening. nHOA, attempts to take ranch from non-member. The country was outraged. Attorneys, ranchers, even victims of HOA atrocities supported me. Lucas worked tirelessly on the case, exposing forged deeds, pilfered notary stamps, and Ethan's incriminating testimony. But Silver Pines didn't stop there. They installed a trench through my pasture, cutting my irrigation line. Water poured into my fields, endangering my crops and livestock. Then came the blow of all blows. My horses escaped. Oil had been poured into their troughs, contaminating their water. Sheriff's Deputy Ryan collected samples and labeled it coordinated vandalism. Sarah's second headline shouted HOA poisons ranch water. Drones buzzed over my land, their Silver Pines logos blinking, saying they were following construction. Lucas was furious. They're creating a paper trail to cover themselves up. Then Martha came, out of breath and ashen. They're having an undercover HOA meeting to cast a vote to evict you by force. I didn't delay. I raced to their clubhouse, Lucas in close pursuit. We snuck around, taping through a window. Hale's voice thundered, "This rancher is disrupting our timeline. I want full-site enforcement, demolish his buildings, frame him as aggressive." One of the board members saw us and we took off, but the tape was worth it. It went live, eliciting protests, state investigations, and ultimately Hale's arrest. Next came a surprise, a whistleblower from within. Ellen Price, a former board member, provided emails that showed more sinister intentions. One email from Hale stated, "If the rancher won't leave, turn up the heat," literally. That night, my barn went up in flames. I managed to save the animals, but half of it was gone, reduced to ash. The fire chief confirmed it was arson, an Arizona gasoline-soaked rag tossed through a window. The fury inside me burned hotter than the flames. Lucas filed an injunction, halting Silver Pines' actions. Sarah's report. They burned the barn went viral, spreading nationwide. As the community came to my aid, ranchers restored my fences, and strangers sent resources. But Silver Pines, now controlled by the smooth developer Nathan Cole, placed a lien on my land, behind a shell corporation called Copper Ridge. We struck back, suing for fraud, arson, sabotage, and racketeering. The FBI and IRS attached to the case, and we soon discovered a complex money laundering scheme. Nathan Cole ran off to Mexico. The HOA collapsed. The board quit. The Silver Pines website disappeared. In court, Judge Margaret Holt made the ultimate decision. The lien was invalidated, and HOA activity on my property was prohibited forever. The dust was settling, but I could feel the load of what had been lost and what had been gained. The oak saplings were little, but they stood as a testament to resilience, their roots burrowing into the ground as firmly as the generations that came before them. Lucas smiled, resting against the fence. "You didn't just save your ranch, you tore down their empire." His words had the weight of truth to them, but I knew that there was more yet to be done. The battle was not over land alone. It was over honor, family, and principle. And at that moment, with the sun shining its golden light over the new fence and the land rolling away before me, I saw. This was not a victory alone. This was a message. Our struggle for what was right had rekindled a fire in this community. Neighbors, once heads down and humble, were now standing tall, willing to fight for their homes, their heritage, and their way of life. And as I stood there looking at the fields where the old oaks used to stand, where the wind blew through their branches like an old friend, I knew that the battle had been only a prelude. I wasn't finished yet. This wasn't my ranch anymore. It was ours. And while there was still air in my lungs, while the blood of my forebears still flowed through my veins, I would make sure it remained that way. The battle against greed and power wasn't won, but with every dawn breaking, we were closer to winning.